People who realize they were the villain in someone else's story. What's your side of story? Okay, so this weird misunderstanding happened when I was visiting the Netherlands. I just bought a sandwich from one of the bakeries and was sitting by the canal eating it when this massive duck jumps out the water and goes straight towards me with its eyes fixed on my sandwich. I'm kinda worried it's gonna try to grab it off me, so I wave my foot in its direction to try to ward it off. The duck stops at my feet and just sits there staring at me while I eat. Okay, whatever. It's just going to sit there and not bother me, I think. So I just ignore it and continue eating my sandwich. Not long after this, a woman approaches me and speaks to me in Dutch. I look at her blankly and she keeps speaking, so I say sorry, I don't understand. She switches to broken English and starts saying, "You make yourself big, you kick the duck." I continue to stare blankly, so she repeats herself a few more times. I'm desperately trying to figure out what the heck she's talking about. Eventually it dawns on me. She's seen that the duck wants my sandwich, and she's trying to tell me how to make it go away. The duck isn't bothering me, and I really don't want to kick it, so I just smile and write okay. But this dang woman won't leave. She keeps standing there staring at me, so I sigh, comically puff up my chest to make myself big, look at the duck, and give it a small nudge with my foot. Nothing happens. The duck doesn't even react. It's still standing in the same place. At this point the woman goes freaking ballistic. She starts yelling at me to frick off back to my own country. She hopes I choke on my sandwich and even says she's going to throw me in the canal and makes a motion towards me. I'm just sitting staring at her in utter disbelief. After she leaves, I'm kind of in shock and trying to process what happened. I eventually realize that from her perspective it looked like I'd kicked the duck when I'd waved my foot at it, and she was trying to call me out on it. To which I responded by politely smiling and then kicking the duck again while puffing up my chest to take the pee out of her. She's probably still telling people about the butthole animal abuse a foreigner. I believe this was exactly the duck's intent. You're a victim in this. When I was in first grade, my best friend came over to my house to play, and while there she lost her golden Charizard card. We looked for it, but still hasn't found it by the time she had to go home. I kept looking, but it was just gone. My mom made me put away all the toys we'd played with, and when everything was clean there was still no golden Charizard. The next day at school she asked me for it, and I was like, it's so weird, I never found it. Obviously, she didn't believe me. I actually didn't realize why, because I was 6 and was telling the truth, but it must have looked like I'd stolen it. So then she hated my guts and was mean to me forever, with periodic check-ins where she's asked me for the card and I'd just be like, no, seriously, I do not have your card. Eventually, her family was going to move away, and her father brought her to my door to ask me, one last time, to do the right thing and give her the card back. This did not make me magically have the card. He stood on my doorstep and did the whole disappointed adult thing, and I still did not have the card. He asked to speak to my parents, who then grilled me about it, and I still, predictably, did not have the card. Then we moved, and the entire house was packed, and we still did not find the card. My theories are either that it fell between some floorboards or something, or that it somehow got from her pocket into the lining of her coat. My ex accused me of stealing his golden Legend of Zelda DS. I didn't take it. I played it for like 30 minutes and left it by the window in his room. I think one of his housemates took it when he halfway moved in with his dad. Once my wife and I were waiting at an intersection, and there was a panhandler sitting on an overturned bucket holding a sign asking for change. I had $1 and some change in my pocket, so I gave it to my wife and said, give this to him. She rolled down the window and held the money out to the guy, but he just sat there and said, just throw it to me. My wife said, huh, and he said, I don't feel like getting up, just toss it to me. So, my wife took all the coins and stacked them up and wrapped the dollar bill around them in an attempt to make a tossable package. Then, she tossed the package at the guy, and as he held out his hand to catch it, the package freaking exploded and coins went flying all around him and the dollar blew away. He just sat there and shrugged at my wife, and the light turned green, so I started to drive into the intersection. Then, In the rearview mirror I see that the lady in the car behind me had gotten out and was collecting the coins off the ground, handed them to the panhandler, and then gave him a "you poor soul" hug. I realized later that to her it looked like we had callously thrown our spare change at this poor panhandler who had put his hand up to defend himself, sending change flying everywhere. I imagine she thought we were cackling with glee, Cruella de Vil style, as we sped off after our disgraceful act, and she felt the need to comfort him after he had been treated so badly. Little did she know the guy was just a lazy crap who couldn't be bothered to get off his bucket. I realized that I was about to become a passenger in my own life, so I called off the wedding. I never should have proposed, and I still feel bad about it when I think about it, but there's no doubt I was the villain. Hard decision and realization. Your unhappiness would only have brought unhappiness in this union. This villainous act led to most probably a better outcome for the both of you. Thanks for sharing. When I was in 5th grade, I was good friends with a kid in my class. I had just moved to the area before the school year began, and he helped me get adjusted to everything. He was even quite generous, letting me borrow his Nintendo Power that had a guide to FF1. We also got into various boyhood shenanigans, roughhousing and the like. One time, I was showing off my balance by walking across one of the playground beams that was a few feet off the ground. On impulse, he pushed my foot as I was taking a step, and of course I fell. I wasn't hurt. We both thought it was hilarious. I threw some playground sand at him in retaliation. As I relayed the story to my family that night, thinking it would get some laughs, my mother said, "He didn't even apologize? He doesn't sound like your friend." I tried to backtrack a bit and recover from the unexpected reaction, but I mean, I was only 9. She followed up with, "I forbid you to be friends with him." This, of course, was when I was still obedient to my mother. I was so sad. I cried most of the night in bed. The next day at recess, I told him that my mom said we couldn't be friends anymore. I didn't even wait for a response. I just walked away, sat under a tree, and fought off the urge to cry more. He was hugely messed up from that, I think. He resented me, justifiably, for the rest of the school year. He started bullying me and legit getting into fights with me. He started to bully others, too, and became a loner at recess. Another of my friends from that era of my life remembers this kid as a bully. So, not only was I a villain in this story, but I basically may have been another villain's origin story. Maybe he was always seen as a bully before I showed up in 5th grade. Maybe the reason he became friends with me is because he didn't have any other friends because he was a bully in the earlier grades. But as a person who tries to be a good person, I had the ability to choose to be a good influence on this lonely kid through my actions in our friendship. Instead, I abandoned him, seemingly suddenly and for no reason. I was never obedient to my mother again after realizing what may have resulted from that. I knew I needed to use my own judgment on what actions may be right or wrong. I'm sorry, Jake. I still have your Nintendo Power. This sounds awkwardly like a story from my husband's youth. Not exactly villain, but one time a guy came up and I thought asked me to watch his motorcycle for a bit since I was sitting there, but I realized after he had left while giving me a strange look that he'd probably asked me to help hold or move it, and then I completely ignored his request after saying that I could. But I'm not gonna. When I was in elementary school there was a girl who copied everything I did. From what I would wear or paint in art class and even down to the way I organized my desk. One time she heard my friend and I talking about going to the neighborhood playground to hang out and she just showed up. Neither I nor my friend really liked her, so we said hi but kept playing without her. After she tried to play with us multiple times, my friend and I just decided to leave because we didn't want to play with her. I thought she was trying to take my identity and my friends by becoming me, and it made me really angry. So I wasn't very nice to her. I wouldn't play with her at recess. I didn't want to sit next to her at lunch, and when she asked me to come over and play I would always say no. Obviously, she was just insecure and wanted to be friends, but being 10 I didn't understand that. During high school I realized what had been going on, reached out to her. We talked about it and we both explained our sides of what we were thinking at the time. I was in butt, but she understood how I could feel that way. I apologized and we both went on with our lives. Even if she did forgive me, I was the villain. If it helps, I try very hard to make sure I'm trying to understand where people are coming from because of this. You did more than a lot of other people. You reached out and apologized. My sister was relentlessly bullied in high school. Years later, a girl, who my sister had been friends with but then she joined the bullies, reached out to my sister to apologize, and the change in my sister was immense. She was happier. You did a good thing. In junior school there was a girl I thought was my friend and we'd have fun bantering with each other. Until one day she was crying and someone else told me she was scared of me and considered me a bully. It broke my heart because I sincerely thought we were just having fun together and I never would have seriously bullied her about anything. Our relationship was never the same even though I tried apologizing and explaining my side. I've had similar experiences. I made a new friend and we were teasing each other and being sarcastic, and it wasn't till years later she told me that most days she has come home from school in tears because of something I had said. Luckily, as time went on we got to know each other better and we're still best friends. I felt absolutely horrible for a while though. Back in 9th grade we had this math teacher. He was somewhat inexperienced in teaching but tried hard to teach us. I, being an butthole, always spoke out and used to pass mean comments. He tried to make the class understand every topic, but I and few of my friends always gave him hard time by making noises and mean comments. One day in class while he was struggling to solve a wrong equation or something, I can't remember exactly, I said something about him being incompetent and can't teach us. I didn't bother thinking about it since, but years later my friend mentioned it and I realized how much of an butthole I had been with him. He had probably just started teaching then and couldn't handle the class properly and was trying as hard as he could. AWW. Dang, that's fricked up. Poor dude. He was probably trying his best. Classroom management is so hard. I broke up with my boyfriend who was incredibly in love with me. 2-year relationship in high school, and a year later my family sued him for 6 digits. So during our relationship, we got into a really severe car accident. He was at fault. I ended up in the ICU for several days and had permanent organ damage. As of yet hasn't affected my quality of life. It was really, really bad. He was injured and incredibly upset over it. Really sweet and genuinely good guy. I recovered, and a few months later I broke up with him for other reasons. Well, his insurance didn't pay my very expensive medical bills. My parents were struggling and they ended up suing his family's insurance for the absolute maximum that the insurance would be required to pay without making his family have to pay out of pocket. His insurance would provide a lawyer. His family was very poor and we didn't want to punish them. We just wanted his insurance to pay for my bills. We refused to sue for more than that maximum despite our lawyer telling us we could have won more money. The lawsuit unfortunately can't say we were suing his insurance company, and we weren't allowed to contact them. So they get served papers telling them his ex-girlfriend was suing for a hell of a lot of money they didn't have. Well, we won. I got a couple $1,000s in pain and suffering that went towards my rent. The rest of the money was used for medical and legal bills. I guess it's what happened with my ex. I fell in love with him hard and he realized he didn't love me, so he broke up with me but really liked me and wanted to stay friends. So I remained his friend for 2 months, but my feelings got so out of control I started hounding him to get back with me. He got sick of this and cut me off. I just went ballistic and would turn up at his house and cry and beg to speak to him. I'd text non-stop. I was pure nice girl. I eventually became suicidal and was hospitalized a few times and they suggested I had borderline personality disorder. In the end it turned out I didn't and we still don't know why I ended up like that. But I effectively stalked him for a year. Sending him a text on a burner number would ease my anxiety for a moment, even though it caused him suffering. In the end he got a restraining order out on me and I came to my senses and left him alone. I hate myself for what I did to him and still wonder what snapped in my brain to make me act like that. If you're out there, Lance, I am very sorry and I promise I am still working on myself to get better. Told a girl not to touch my belly. She did and I let out a horrific fart. I knew by telling her not to that she would. We were in an elevator at the time. If someone asks you if you're ticklish, it doesn't matter what you say, they are going to touch you. If someone asks you if you're ticklish, and you don't want to be touched, you have to say something like, I have diarrhea, and you're going to make it come out. This might not exactly be the point of this question, but still. Okay, so I was in a relationship with someone for around 11 months and we were on a very rough patch. This was when I was 16. So basically stupid arguments. She had a guy best friend that I didn't think much of. So we were on a break and she calls him and tells him that our relationship is not going well. Turns out he has liked her since around 3 years and never had the guts to tell her. He tells her everything, how he had feelings for her, how he was jealous that I asked her out first and that he still likes her. So she starts to flirt with him and soon thereafter our relationship ends. So once I find this all out and they start officially dating, like 10 days after it ends, I lash out at this guy and we have a nasty back and forth. After which I realize I am the villain in a rom-com in which the other guy is the protagonist. This type of answer is exactly what I came here for. I once saw a really good video of a CIA agent explaining how everyone is a good guy in their view. Makes you really think. Honestly, I'm not the good guy in my view. I'm more like the side character who gets picked off in the first 10 minutes of the apocalypse movie. I was in butthole. Most of these come from my high school years. Me thinking I am being funny, getting laughs, but not realizing I was being a piece of crap to others at times. Some underclassmen would try to hang around my friend group, but they annoyed the crap out of us so I'd be a dickhead. Buddies would laugh but I'd think back years later and realize what I was doing was bullying. I've since apologized if I ever saw them or talked to them again. It may sound dumb but in my youth I never thought about how they're their own person going through their own situations and maybe just wanted a friend. It is good that you realized it later on and apologized. I am proud of you. Sorry for my bad English. I was very rude to a specific teacher as a kid. 6th grade. Said some horrible things to this sweet old lady just because she was a bit strict on rules. I was in a rebellious frick you I won't do what you tell me even though you are a reasonable adult phase. I am sure that she thought I was the worst little crap. If it were possible, I would apologize in a heartbeat. I was in a rebellious frick you I won't do what you tell me even though you are a reasonable adult phase. If the coronavirus outbreak has taught us anything, it's that there's a lot of people out there who never matured out of that phase. I was at Costco. The parking lot was full. Someone was waiting for my spot. I unloaded my cart and locked my car, intending to walk the cart back to the cart corral. The person waiting for my spot hollered at me, nicely, from their window not to worry about walking the cart all the way back to the cart corral. That they would take the cart when they went into shop. Sounded good to me. I parked the cart directly next to the bumper of the car parked right next to me so that it wouldn't impede the person waiting for my spot from entering the spot once I exited. I got in my car and commenced backing out of the spot. A woman walking through the parking lot towards the store, who had seen me place my cart in such a way that it blocked the car next to me from backing out, assumed I was just a lazy entitled bee and had abandoned the cart there. She marched over, snatched up the cart with a look of sheer rage and disgust and made several loud comments about lazy people and so on. She took the cart with her and marched on her way. High horse. Party of one. I backed out of the spot and sort of waved at the guy who was waiting. Like, what are you gonna do, right? I slowly eased my car up alongside the high and mighty woman. My husband who was in the passenger seat said, "Don't do it, LOL. I ignored him and rolled down my window and sweetly said, "Excuse me." She whipped around like, "Yeah, what?" I said, "The person waiting for my spot wanted that cart that you took. They told me to leave it there for them and they would take it and use it for their shopping. They wanted that cart, but you stole it from them." The look on her face was priceless. I rolled up my window and drove away, well pleased. I got the same lecture from a woman in the Smith's parking lot a couple months ago when I was the person taking the cart into the store. Weird how some people are always out for blood based on measly assumptions. I was out drinking at a bar I went to regularly, met this couple who were playing darts. They were a nice, attractive couple. They were both kinda flirty with me that night but nothing happened. Went back to the bar another night, saw them there again. The girl got very flirty, touching me lots. They'd had a couple drinks and said they were going to Uber home. I was sober and offered to drive them. I said I was going to just drop them off, but the girl was adamant about me coming in to meet the dogs. So I go in, she starts getting a bit more physical, but her boyfriend was falling asleep on the couch, so she said maybe another night. Next thing I hear, she's crazy mad at me for forcing myself into their relationship. They broke up and she kicked him out, and she pretty much blamed me for the whole thing. I'm more worried about how you went into a stranger's house because they said they had dogs. I was probably one of many villains in my childhood best friend's story. If you ask her, I ghosted her for a boy. I know she thinks this because I'm still in contact with her sister. In reality, she manipulated me and gaslit me for our entire childhood and teenage years. She attempted to isolate me and made me choose between my other friends and her constantly. She would refuse to tell me what was wrong and then blamed me for not knowing why she was upset every time. It was always stupid things, like I was drawing a dragon, which she saw as childish and uncool. What finally made me walk away was when she got mad at me for wanting to spend a few days with my BF alone. We were dating long distance. I hadn't seen him in over a year. She picked a fight over it and I begged her to forgive me, which she refused and continued to yell at me over page-long text messages. It caused my first ever major anxiety attack, which made her even more angry because I dared to not answer her for an hour while I was vomiting and trying to pull myself together. She had not answered my previous message for a week to cool off BTW, so it's not like I left mid-conversation. I decided to not answer her for a while after another round of I'm so sorry messages, and when I looked back after a bit, I realized how toxic this crap was. I regret not trying to explain it to her, why I had to walk away. Ghosting her was not the right thing to do, but I knew that if I tried to open the conversation again I wouldn't walk away. I'd end up right back where I started and I just couldn't do that again. Her sister did ask about it a few years later and I didn't have the heart to tell her everything that happened. She was aware of the manipulation and some of the crappy behavior though. She tried to warn me about it for years, but she was my best friend and I trusted her, so I didn't listen. Whoa, that's fricked up. I'm glad you managed to get away from that girl. Holy smokes. I once dated a girl who was too young for me, but still legal. She was persistent and I said no a few times. Finally I accepted and we dated for a few months. I wasn't really into her and I had been contemplating breaking up with her for a few weeks and I had finally decided to break up with her that weekend. On Friday, I met someone at a party and hooked up with her. When I met my girlfriend that Saturday to break up with her, she spontaneously told me that she loved me and wanted to be with me forever before I had the chance to tell her. So I broke up with my girlfriend after cheating on her, right as she confessed her love to me. I still regret just about everything about that 4-month period in my life. One day when I'm not so ashamed of how things turn out I can publicly share this, but for my current sanity I would like to share it here. 2 years ago I got into a bad relationship. My now ex was very verbally abusive, snooped my phone constantly. I couldn't go anywhere without him. He spent my money recklessly while also bullying me into buying him things and constant beer trips. He drank 4 tall cans probably every night at least. And I'm not sure if that makes him an alcoholic, but he was drunk a lot. My family relationships were poor and he also used this to isolate me from them. I felt trapped but unable to leave a relationship that would make me homeless and completely broke. Desperate and starved for attention, I cheated on him with the first guy who gave me positive attention. I loved feeling important and like I mattered to someone else. Never before in my entire almost 30 years of living have I even entertained the idea of cheating on someone, and here I am having full-on affairs behind my boyfriend's back for months. Eventually he found out and told pretty much the entire world how much of a cheating ass I am and how I ruined our relationship. Convinced my family that I am evil. I wrecked a perfectly great life. He thought I was the one. Even after all of that he still refused to break up with me, so I snapped, took the car, it was in my name, and ran away with the man I had been seeing behind his back. To so many people I'm the bad guy, the villain, in this story, including my family and most of my old friends. It's been a long time and I'm still together with my current boyfriend, but 2018 to 2020 feels like a depressed blur of life. I'm still trying to cope and feel like me again. Abuse is a hard thing to prove, especially when it's your words against someone else's. Removing yourself from toxic relationships to begin a sane one is strength, a leap of faith I'm glad you could share with us. My friend and I, both girls, had been single forever and it was something we bonded over. We were in different cities and she decided to visit. She brought her boyfriend over, presumably to show off. I had gotten a makeover and therapy since the last time we'd met. I was the definition of sad girl prior to that, and she immediately became convinced I was trying to steal her boyfriend. I had no such intention, but it started becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy for her. Her BF and I had a lot in common which I kept trying to downplay, but she kept playing up. Like we spoke the same language, had several common friends, had the same food aversions, and we would be in the same city at the same time for work in a few months. She just kept growing more and more insecure. I heard her crying in the night. She was staying over with me, and he with some family. She went out in the morning to get coffee, and I was taking a shower. The door was unlocked. I didn't know that. I came out in my underwear and was applying moisturizer when her boyfriend walks in, and then she walked in a minute later. She ran out crying. He ran out after her, and I was mortally embarrassed. Apparently that caused enough pain in the relationship that they broke up. So I'm very clearly the villain to her, but all of it was avoidable if she was less insecure. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.